Before making this response to your response, I did look at some of your other videos, and they're all really nicely produced, almost elegant. There's a couple of things. I think, there's this line, between science and philosophy, and I guess I was sort of, in part of what I was commenting on before, was trying to get to the science of our origins, the history of life, the dynamics of life, what makes it possible and what the probabilities of it are. I guess I would still contend that if we had there's in our history a single cell that is a common ancestor to all known life on Earth, that life was probably something like the microorganisms they find at the bottom of the ocean that are living off of chemistry rather than the sun. There's all that the original cell wasn't something we would recognize in the current environment because it wasn't created in that environment, and evolved to adapt to the environment the Earth became. But regardless, there was that single cell, that single entity, that reproducing entity, and I think it was. I don't, we can trace the cell to before it was a cell, before it was a self-contained reproducing life form, but I don't know if it's necessary to go there, just because I think the big event, the more dramatic event, where chemistry now becomes biology, actually, right? Theoretically, the two sciences have their transition at that cell, basically, because at one point you basically just have chemistry that is reactive, and at the next stage you have this living thing that has a biology. But anyway, let's not get caught up in words. It's not objectively. I'm just the question that I ponder is just more about what is the probability. I sort of asked that before, but I know it's something we can't really narrow down, but that's sort of something we need to understand. We need to understand that reactive life, or reactive chemistry, isn't significant life. And there's a line too that now it becomes less science and more philosophy about where life becomes meaningful. Is a fish much more than a rock, a swimming rock? It has a consciousness. We could speculate that it has a consciousness just because it has a central nervous system that reacts to pain, what appears to be anyway a reaction to pain as an input. And we can, I suppose, assume that that's sort of what's a constituent of consciousness. But let's say that everything on Earth there was no consciousness. It was just microorganisms consuming each other. Why the question's significant to me is that I would wonder what, does that really have any meaning? What's the point of, life with no consciousness is nothing. And I would almost say that life without intelligence is nothing. And it's not even that it's nothing. It's not irrelevant like a rock, because if it has consciousness, then it has this vulnerability to pain and suffering. And so it has a negative potential. There's no real negative potential for rocks. We don't have to worry about a rock holocaust. The vulnerability injected by this thing we know as suffering is a significant change in the meaning of the universe, because And then the further, take, so that's the scientific question might be, how big a part, or how much of a likelihood is life as a constituent of the dynamics of the universe. I mean, it obviously doesn't produce it with regularity, as far as we know. But how improbable is it? I mean, could it be possible? I suppose it obviously is possible that we're the most intelligent thing that matter's ever produced. That would give us a stunning responsibility to intelligence, that we've achieved it, and that the last thing we should do is squander it. But anyway, so let's the other part of it is this philosophical perspective, and then we can sort of see you obviously you're the glass is half full kind of guy, and I'm the glass is half empty kind of guy. I look at the mediocrity of existence and find it lacking, and you seem to think it's got redeeming value, beyond that subjective impression. So I mean, even though you're suggesting we should take life personally, personally, subjectively, I'm not too impressed. Objectively, I am impressed, just because I have a profound respect for this thing called intelligence. I mean, intelligence is, in my opinion, more important than the life crap. Intelligence is the real gravy of humanity's existence, and the real meaning of it. I mean, I guess I should say it's the real meat of the existence. It's the whole meal, really. It's everything, and we've got to be so careful not to squander that. Well, anyway, so then there was part where you're getting into this, where we shouldn't be looking at our lives from the outside in, and to me, that's the very nature of objective perspective. Of course we want to do that. I mean, if we're rats in a maze, I think it'd be great if we step out of the maze and take a look at ourselves and try to figure out, oh man, what is this? Are we just chasing cheese? And okay, the cheese is individual to each one of us, and so this guy likes, Roquefort, and this guy likes cheddar, and this guy likes, Swiss, and it's just, we're all chasing different cheese, but it's all cheese chasing. The need is, created inside of us, and we start just chasing the cheese, chasing the need, hungry for fulfillment. But objectively, if we're going to look at that creature, that animal that's chasing the cheese, I don't know, are we going to see purpose in that? I mean, purpose beyond some natural purpose, in that we're fulfilling nature's demand, that this is how this survival game is played. Nature imposes the need, and we spend our lifetime satisfying the need. And so that's enough that I ponder. I have conclusions, but I don't, it's another part of this thing that's hard to get your brain around, because it goes back to the sense that we have, I think, innately or even intellectually, that or a wanting, an intellectual wanting, that's probably a contradiction, for there to be some purpose. But if it is just cheese chasing, if we're just, nature that doesn't have any sensibilities, any intelligence, and we're just fulfilling that natural purpose, we're just playing out the cause and effect chain that it initiated, and that's kind of depressing. I'm not suggesting we all come